I'm also the co-founder and treasurer of an organization called FR33 Aid, and I'm talking today about setting up a nonprofit organization and some of the challenges we ran into, especially in the need for alternative banking systems, I'll put it that way, but some of the decisions we made along the way because it's so difficult to start any business, including a nonprofit these days. So I'll be using a lot of FR33 Aid examples, but before I get into the discussion about how to start a nonprofit, I'll talk a little bit about FR33 Aid. FR33 Aid was founded to facilitate networking among medically skilled liberty lovers, and also who want to conduct projects that show the value of mutual aid. And we love to do outreach at events that aren't quite so heavily anarchist and libertarian as Liberty Forum. We had a great time at Bardo Farm Fest, which wasn't 100% anarchist, and we opened a lot of eyes there, and that was really cool. So that's the direction we like to go in, to educate people about how it's possible to do things on a voluntary basis without the force of government, and any projects that are about that we like to support. We focus first on the medically skilled side, but in the future, you know, our mission statement's pretty broad, and there are reasons for that I'll get into later. But you know, if you have a project that you think highlights the value of mutual aid that you'd like to talk to us about, I'd be happy to hear it. So, and we have about, I guess, 20. We have over 20 people in our medically skilled Liberty Lover Network, and we've been, oh, Stephanie's here, she's one of them. Stephanie is one of my co-organizers of FR33 Aid. I'm glad she was able to join us. And so without further ado, I'll talk about starting a nonprofit. So the first thing when you're starting any organization or any project is to share your vision. It's really important to articulate the vision you see, the goals you have in mind. And one of the ways I did this for FR33 Aid was before PorcFest last year. It was quite a long ways before, not quite a year ahead of it, but in the fall of 2010, I wrote an article to share on the PorcFest blog that said, "Do you trust the state to save your life?" Because I don't know if you know, but when someone experiences a cardiac arrest, it can strike anyone, and you know, every second counts, and cops sometimes take up to half an hour. You never know, especially in highly populated, dense areas or very rural areas. You could be looking at a really long time to having someone help you. And you know, I saw a graphic online very similar with a gun in the same way. If you have someone breaking into your house, you know, you might have to wait 30 minutes for a cop to show up. And so, and Jacob, one of our other volunteers, said that once the cop showed up on a cardiac arrest that he went to as a volunteer EMTs, the cops didn't even bring their defibrillator in. And so they were fortunately able to save that person. But anyway, my point is, when I wrote this article, I really wanted people to understand that there are a lot of things we can do to help each other and not just sit on our hands waiting around for someone else to help us. Because sometimes nobody helps us, right? So, and there are a lot of things you can do. You can learn CPR. CPR is really easy these days. The Heart Association is teaching people to just do chest compressions to the beat of Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. And if you guys ever see that and remember it, remember that's really as simple as it is, you know, just doing chest compressions. They no longer recommend breaths for lay people because it was too hard to remember, and studies have shown it doesn't really have an advantage over the chest compressions when lay people are doing CPR. So I have a lot of passion about CPR. I worked for a medical device company that makes defibrillators that are really, really easy to use. And I have one, we have one at our FR33 Aid table over at Liberty Forum if you want to come over there and check it out. We give demos, and we also have our CPR mannequin where you can try giving chest compressions, and Jacob is getting his CPR instructor certification, so can help you learn about that. So I shared my vision because I really wanted to connect with other people that really have the same wish to not rely on government for for things like this when someone's having a medical emergency and might imminently die without help. Or even just simpler things like, cuts and scrapes, and gosh knows, Mandrick probably uses about half of our first aid skills, but he's an awesome supporter. But hopefully Liberty Forum won't have as much injuries as PorcFest did. But it's been a really great way to connect with people. We had almost 20 volunteers at last PorcFest, and that was way more than even I had anticipated. I was looking forward to connecting with, several medically skilled people, but we had people from all over the place. Chip came in from Alaska and just walked into PorcFest and saw us there, and he's a paramedic, and he said, "Hey, do you need some help? Do you want me to help join you?" And it was fantastic. So even at PorcFest, we met a lot of people.
And you're at Libertopia?
Yes, we were also at Libertopia. And but even so, when we set a goal, thank you for getting back on track, Kevin. When I set the goal and sent out the blog post, my vision was all about PorcFest. We were going to get a bunch of medically skilled Liberty lovers together and have a booth there and offer first aid services and CPR and AED awareness. But we found that we built up so much momentum planning, and Stephanie jumped in and really, really helped us with a lot of the logistical planning, getting a table and tent together and everything like that. And we found that we were kind of ready earlier than we needed to be, and so we had the opportunity to do Free Keen Fest, and then after that Bardo Farm Fest, which was really a lot of fun as well. And so then we just kept picking up momentum, so that was really good. So sharing your vision is important, and then that leads right into number 2, which is networking. Connect with a lot of people, talk about what you're doing, talk about your project, talk about your goal, share, if you write, share blog posts, write about it, set up Facebook pages, things like that. For the networking side, I also asked some people I knew that really are good at outreach, like Sovereign Curtis being one of them. He's always connected with so many people around, even from far away. I asked him to help me recruit for volunteers, anyone with medical skills or that wanted to join us, and even just to meet us. And so lots of people like that I just sort of networked with and got to know. And I also, like I said, connected with Stephanie, and then also Garland West, my other co-founder and partner. She lives in Charlotte, and she unfortunately can't be here today, but we have very complementary skills in this crew.
And she did that event in North Carolina too.
Yes, she did. Yeah, the L2 Forum,
yeah.
Or something, L2, Liberty 2. So, yeah, and she does all of our nice, beautiful graphics and really helps us stay motivated and engaged, and help found Free Aid by even interviewing me for the Happy Porcupine PorcFest newsletter, and which she also volunteers and does. And Stephanie does a lot of our press relations, media relations, and lots of yes, absolutely, logistics. Stephanie's located here in New Hampshire, and so most of the events we've been supporting so far have been here in New Hampshire, but not all, as Kevin keeps mentioning. And so it's been really tremendous to have such great support, and our whole organization is volunteers. I'm a volunteer, Garland's a volunteer, Stephanie's a volunteer, Mike Ruff, who I don't know where he is, but okay. And we have a lot of people that, and we're all 100% volunteers. So that's been really cool and inspiring. The third one is the one I really kind of want to spend some time talking about a little bit, because we had to decide whether to incorporate or not. And this was a very, very difficult decision. I just heard from Dobby that the one thing in common across the Occupy movements was corporate personhood. So corporations are evil, there's this theme going on. But I want to tell you, it was a difficult decision, and I think we can jump ahead to part 2 about the pros and cons of incorporating. The problem I face there is that we're an organization of medically skilled Liberty lovers from all over the place. We've supported events in both coasts, and it's not really easy to do business in Shire Silver among us. We had to get tents, we had to reserve spaces, we had to buy a CPR mannequin, and there aren't that many places that accept silver for this. And most places either require, if you're in person, you can pay cash, or most often a credit card, and or PayPal. And all of these options require a bank account. And the one thing I found out when I went to my local bank, because I'm the treasurer, and so I went to my local bank, and she's great. She recognizes me by name and says hello, and it's much better working with a local bank than a bigger bank. But they need a federal ID number. And so in order to get a federal ID number and get a bank account, I had to incorporate. And so my alternatives were to use my own bank account and potentially muddle Free Aid's stuff with my personal stuff, which I really wasn't open to. Some people are, and that's great, and I respect their decisions. That wasn't something I was willing to do. And so we made the difficult decision to apply for a federal ID number. It was incredibly easy. It's with the IRS, and our bank accepted with, just the fact that I sent her my draft state paperwork in addition to that federal ID number paperwork. She opened our bank account, and then that enabled me to open our PayPal accounts and everything else to enable donations to start coming in. And it enabled me to reimburse our volunteers for the expenses that they had paid for our startup fees. And unfortunately, it's not really possible to do business in Bitcoins for everything that we need to do or anything like that. I would love to, but and we absolutely love it when people give us silver or give us Bitcoins. We have 3 donations of Bitcoins totaling 5 Bitcoins now, and I'll totally love it. But it's just not possible to really do business solely without relying on a bank account that I could find. So, and this allows me to do PayPal and do checks. And Dwala. Dwala requires bank account too. So there's just not that many alternatives, unfortunately. So if anyone knows about alternative banking, let's see me afterwards. And if there are really any true options of that, let me know. But because we did have a federal ID number, in order to avoid tax liability, we had to file for a nonprofit status. So it's humongous amounts of paperwork that we're all working on, but mostly me in my spare time and in between my other jobs and activism, filling out all this copious paperwork and financial forms and you name it. So that's what I've been doing. So deciding whether to incorporate or not is something that's important to do fairly early, because you need to decide if you're going to have an account to accept donations or if you're just going to accept donations in cash, which actually most of our donations so far have, well, maybe not most now because we got a big donation in January, but a lot of our donations have been in cash. So that's been great. Setting up fundraising, like I said, we established the bank checking account. PayPal, Dwala, Square. Square's a little credit card reader that hooks into my iPhone. It's really cool. It's just a little inch square thing. I have it in my bag. I can show you if you want to see it. It just hooks into my iPhone, and I can slide a credit card, and they take a portion of it in fees for processing the credit cards, because the Visa, they charge a lot of money too. So, but that allows us to accept credit card donations as well. And then we, Stephanie and Garland and I routinely talk about how to prioritize what expenses that we're going to cover. For the first Pork Fest, that was easy because we raised about $650, a little bit over that, I think, by the time of Pork Fest, and we were able to fully reimburse all of our volunteers for the startup expenses of Free Aid, including, CPR mannequin and all the literature we printed and all the stuff we got, because we also give away we accept donations, but we give freely away, sunscreen, all kinds of pharmacy items that people might need or might have forgotten, or whatever, aspirin, whatever they need. Condoms also. those are popular at Libertopia. More so than Pork Fest, much, I don't know. Maybe we could do a study on it. But anyway, so we were able to reimburse all of our volunteers that had graciously fronted the money for all of these things, and also the state fees that I had to incur for filing the bank paperwork, which were obnoxious. Those were my least favorite ones to pay, for sure. After we did that, we planned and executed and publicized activities, and we didn't really stop ourselves, even though you know, like I said, a lot of our volunteers fronted the money for their things, and we just moved ahead planning originally for Pork Fest, but then doing Freaking Fest and Bardo Fests, and then we also had a plan in place for Libertopia, which was great. We raised enough money to fund sending Stephanie there and reimburse some of the volunteers for their travel expenses and things. So that was fantastic. And that's really the way a lot of our funding has shifted over time. So we originally used it for our startup expenses, but once we had a body of stuff, we've now shifted to subsidizing our volunteers' registration fees and sometimes travel expenses if they're coming from far away. So if they've been a good volunteer in the past, you know, we prioritize them.
And medical supplies too.
Oh yeah, medical supplies are always a very high priority. So our volunteers also donate their medical supplies, and we always reimburse them for those. That's great. And I donated my AED to Free Aid, so it stays with Stephanie with the Free Aid gear, and we take it around to events, and we shipped it to Libertopia because that's great. And that way, if anyone has a cardiac arrest, we're right there with the ability to defibrillate, and it's really, really easy. And then finally, managing ongoing operations. You know, we're very transparent about our expenses and things. Anyone that volunteers with us is welcome to see our bylaws, and you know, and I always post on our Facebook group for volunteers whenever we receive a donation, no matter what it is, and I just believe in having transparency like that in any case. We establish bylaws and a board of directors, and a lot of this is required by the state whenever you do decide to incorporate and become a nonprofit, so that you don't have to pay taxes. But in any case, a lot of it is, it was kind of an interesting experience there, because the templates I found were all so incredibly sucking up to the state. You know, it was all, you know, according to this and that law, to the full extent of the law, and all this bullshit, really. And Stephanie could tell you, like, I had to like totally trim all that stuff out. Hopefully they don't reject my nonprofit application. But it was really, I had to leave in enough to hopefully make it work. But you know, trimming out all that stuff was kind of difficult. So you know, it was kind of a big job. And then we established a board of directors, and it's Stephanie, Garland, and myself are the directors right now. And we tried to set it up with the most flexibility, so that we don't have to worry about the government. I'm the only person on our state paperwork, because that's part of it, is I didn't want to have anyone else incur that liability of the state knowing where we are and all of that stuff. So that's just me, but that's not the way I run things. You know, we're the whole team, and we couldn't do it without the whole team. So getting a little bit back to the incorporating decision, the biggest thing was the bank account, like I said, but one of the other benefits of having a separate bank account for your organization, separate from any one of the founders, is that, you know, if the founder gets burnt out and decides to quit or whatever, you don't have the huge hassle of, you know, having to close that out and start up a new account and everything like that. And one of the things that also struck me is when the treasurer of the Ladies for Liberty Alliance called into Stephanie's podcast, Pork Therapy, one time, I was talking about the fact that Lola decided to become tax exempt also. And one of their reasons for that decision was because people who are still paying taxes can divert some of their money to a cause that they believe in, and rather than paying for stuff they don't want to pay for. And so, and it really struck me that that was a pretty good reason too. So, you know, I definitely wanted to list that. That is another motivator, so that when people donate to us, they know that they're channeling it. And I personally love it when I donate to anti-war, and they're tax exempt also. So I that makes me feel good that some of my money is being diverted to anti-war, even though they are still robbing me for some of the rest of it for the exact opposite cause. Cons, like I said, it's just paperwork is just unbelievably tremendous. In my day job, I deal with paperwork and government stuff all the time, so I'm used to slaying that windmill, if you will, and navigating it. And then, yeah, one of the big cons, like I said, I just put my own name and address on the paperwork to begin with to try to limit liability, but they know where I live, they know what I'm up to, you know, it's not always, it's not easy to be anonymous. That's definitely a drawback. And then even more paperwork, and then the fees. They have all kinds of fees. They get you every which way, it seems like. So on the back of the handout, I just have a little bit of a timeline for Free Aid as the example, if anyone's interested in doing a nonprofit or supporting one. And our next steps are, we're about a month or so away from filing our 501c3 nonprofit paperwork, and then it'll take at least a few months for the IRS to review that, and probably a few rounds of questions, I'm assuming. But we'll announce that once we have it. We're talking about doing Bardo Farm Fest in May. It's the Memorial Day weekend at the Bardo Farm, which is a fantastic place. I don't know if I know Rocco knows where it is, but anyone else, it's really cool people there, and really a fun time. And then Pork Fest, of course, this year we'll be there in Lancaster. It's the 3rd week of June, I think.
18th to the 24th.
Awesome, thank you, Stephanie. And our long-term vision is really to have a global chapter-based organization where we could support and do a little bit more outreach events rather than focusing on what we're capable of right now, which is more on the Liberty-focused ones, but hopefully to do more outreach and all over the world even. We have a volunteer in the UK, and our guy that does our IT work is in Slovakia. So, and then we have and then another kind of interested person in Canada. It's a paramedic, but he hasn't volunteered with us yet. But it's kind of cool that you know, I like to think of our organization as being global and not limited by stupid arbitrary boundaries. So, and we depend solely on the contributions of volunteers and generous donors. So, thanks. Does anyone have any questions for me? Yeah, Jack.
This will sound like a funny question, but how does a nonprofit make a profit? In other words, how do you guys stay in the black, and then how does that affect the accounting for IRS? In other words, you can't all just be spending all your own resources and all going in the red.
Yeah, well, we always prioritize our expenses. We could probably, it would be so awesome if I could pay Garland for her services on all of her design work she's done. If I could, you know, if we could pay salaries to the people, or, you know, or even pay expenses to our directors, or maybe we could have meetings that are in person. You know, there's so many things that you can do that would add value to the organization. They just haven't made it on our priority list now, because we're, you know, we always prioritize the medical supplies first, and then helping make sure our volunteers can get to where they need to be. Those are kind of taking up most of our funds right now. But oh, and then and the CPR mannequin, you know, so supplies like that are our priorities right now. But
we always have more stuff that we want to do than
yes.
we can actually pay for. So
yeah.
Anything that comes in, we kind of just take it out from that list, basically.
So yeah, so far it hasn't been difficult. If we get a huge donation after we get nonprofit status, or someone that really wants to divert a lot of their tax money or something like that, I'll just have to consider taking on new projects and really try to recruit other people, because I'm just a second, but I wanted to get back to what I was saying earlier about the decision to make our mission statement so broad, was because we knew at the time that we did that we were going to be filing this owner's paperwork, and there is a way within IRS rules to have kind of child organizations underneath that same nonprofit account, if you will, and Anti-War is one of those. Their parent organization, or, you know, status language hierarchies, but, you know, there's another organization that holds antiwar.com's nonprofit status, and it was much easier for antiwar.com to get their nonprofit as a result. And so if we ever get more money than we know what to do with, that would be fantastic. But I would definitely reach out, maybe not just medical, but also other projects, and anyone else interested in doing projects that highlight the value of mutual aid. You know, especially for doing outreach and things. I would love to be in a position to have that problem.
There you go.
Yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, just it sounds like this is kind of like a very prefigurative project in terms of of like, you said showcasing mutual aid, sort of what, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how you guys doing this sort of communicates that, and what you sort of see as the sort of long-term potential for it, like direction for it to develop.
One of the ways, it kind of comes naturally to people when they stop by our booth. They see that we're just accepting donations, and they usually need something, sunscreen, or it's usually something kind of simple, actually. Maybe they have a kid with a blister on her foot or something, and we take care of that, or cut or whatever. And we don't charge them anything, and they know we would never accept tax money. That's just not what we would ever do. And then they kind of get inspired by that, and they see a lot of people volunteering, and they think that's pretty cool. And we're not to the point where we can offer full-blown hospital services or anything. That would be, or insurance, for heaven's sakes. But so we're starting the way we are, with a lot of education, especially about CPR, and mutual aid, meaning like even having the defibrillator on hand is also another example of that. So we're not waiting for government providers to arrive with theirs. The tools are easy enough that lay people can use them, and I worked for the company that designed it that way for that very reason, because I knew that there just simply are not enough doctors in the world to be close to every victim of cardiac arrest, so we knew we had to make it easy and small. And so I think that really opens people's eyes, usually. At Bardo Farm Fest last year, I met someone from Philadelphia that was a friend of one of the farm's owners that wasn't voluntarist, was definitely liberty friendly, I'll say, but was very intrigued by what we were doing, and wanted to hear more about voluntarism. And I had flyers, about voluntarism that I took from the voluntarism Wikipedia page and made into little trifolds. Originally for Bay Area voluntarists, but I was handing them out at Free Aid too. And it was just a really good conversation opener to talking about, we don't believe in the money being taken from people by force. We don't believe in having it be used to hurt people, and we really want to highlight how it can be possible, how in a small way at least it can be possible to do some of these things without government. Yeah, Jack.
Yeah, and it seems like you're demonstrating by your own actions that people are willing to do good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, without being told to.
Oh, absolutely. That was one of the most inspiring things for me. I really believe that most people are good, and most people want to do good. And they just have a construct in their heads that's from the time they were children, usually, that government gets an exception, always. And I used to be that way, and now I went, wow, when I realized I was an anarchist, it was like my whole vision was 90 degrees turned, like a color shifted or something, and I was really seeing things newly. And I think doing things like Free Aid makes people feel good that what we're doing, and makes them more open to hearing about that, and thinking, wow, maybe government doesn't have to exist. And that's really cool when we have those kinds of conversations. We get into great conversations at the Free Aid table, and it really inspires me to keep it going, even through all this horrible state paperwork that I'm dealing with. So that's cool. So, anything else? Yeah, Stephanie.
I wonder, Teresa, if you could just, I want people to hear about the experiences that we had with PayPal when we were starting.
Oh, sure.
And Free Aid.
Do we have time?
Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We're not PayPal fans, I'll just tell you right now. We get a lot of donations through PayPal because so many people have it. But when I really studied the IRS paperwork for a long time before I applied for the state ID, or the IRS federal ID number. I just wanted to be sure what I was getting into before I hit the button there. So I found out that even the IRS says that when you start a nonprofit, you're a nonprofit from the very beginning. They just recognize you later. And so, but a lot of companies, PayPal included, don't care, even what the IRS says. I posted the IRS's own booklet on PayPal's site when they decided that because I had originally signed up for the account as a nonprofit, because even though we didn't have the letter yet, we're definitely a nonprofit. We're not making a profit here. And the people that put up the capital to start the organization didn't expect a return other than their goodwill from having been a part of this organization. And so they didn't look at it as an investment, and I'm one of them, and Stephanie's one of them, and I know that's for sure. So it's not that we ever intend to be a for-profit company, but PayPal didn't care. They said because I wasn't able to provide the IRS paperwork about nonprofit status within 2 weeks of their request, they locked down my account. And this really pissed me off because they made it incredibly easy to sign up for an account. All they needed was our bank account, and I was impressed with how completely easy it was. And my friends had been saying, well, PayPal's been following up with me for my business paperwork, so be prepared for that. I didn't hear anything of that initially, and so I was really surprised. Well, they hit me with it later and then clamped down our account when it had a good like $300 of that $600 we had already raised in it. And then they didn't give me a number to call. It was incredibly difficult to even talk to someone to get this lifted. And eventually what it boiled down to was that they wouldn't even let me change it to a business account. They didn't care what the IRS said about being a nonprofit until you're recognized. They said, well, no one else does this. And I'm like, you're meaning to tell me that no one else ever starts a nonprofit and gets a PayPal account? And they're like, we have lots of nonprofits. It's not ever been a problem. They've always provided it to us. But I'm like, we're just starting out. So after several phone calls and very, very many messages uploaded to their server, which is the only way to communicate with them because they don't accept emails either, it finally came down to we'll never be able to get that account back. So I had to start a new bank account to link to our business account as if we're not a nonprofit. It's only a tiny bit more fees, which is ridiculous, but a major hassle. And then arbitrarily they lifted the block on our first account. I immediately pulled all the money out except for $5, and posted, got all the new code on our website to have it linked to the new bank account and everything like that. And then they locked it again. Like, it's completely arbitrary. My thinking on it is maybe just whenever they want more money, they just lock it up. So actually, because it was right after we had gotten a $100 donation that they locked it. So it really causes me to question that organization. I heard that it was originally founded with good words and stuff, and I had nothing but bad experiences with them. And very much like, well, this is our policy, and we don't even want to listen to you. And yeah, they're one of my least favorite organizations. Dwala, on the other hand, has been better so far. They're a similar kind of online payment network, similar to PayPal, except that their fee is a flat fee of 25 cents per payment.
How do you spell that? Dwala?
Dwala, DWOLLA. .com, yeah.
They're the preferred way to move money in and out of Bitcoins too.
Oh, good.
They have
Good
what?
to know.
They're the preferred way to move money in and out of Bitcoins once you cash them out.
That's awesome. That's really good to know. I like them even better now. Yeah, the one thing is their vision for Dwala is to undermine and do away with credit cards. They view Visa and MasterCard as having a stranglehold on all of these merchant fees that you don't always see when you're paying, but they add cost to everything you pay for, everything that's possible to be paid for with a credit card. Even if you pay cash, they have to raise their prices to cover the expense of these really like 2.5% expenses sometimes from Visa and MasterCard, I think it is. And so Dwala doesn't accept credit cards. That's the one drawback. If you use credit cards a lot, they don't accept credit cards. But they link to a bank account and charge only 25 cents a transaction, even if it's your rent. So hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, it doesn't matter. It's still 25 cents flat fee. So it's awesome. I really, really wish our donor from January that donated $500, awesome. We were excited about that. I wish he had used Dwala instead of PayPal, because PayPal charges those same kind of high fees that Visa and MasterCard charge. So, yeah. Did I cover everything, Stephanie? Can you think of anything else? Do you want to add anything?
Just to end on a positive note, I'm really excited about Aid, and I think we have a great team, and I enjoyed your talk.
Oh, thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone.